Welcome back to today's episode of Wild Reddit Stories from Am I the A-Hole subreddit. Story 1. Am I the a-hole for not watching kids at a cookout and leaving them unsupervised? I, 27 male, was at a backyard cookout with some friends and coworkers. So the ages were late 20s to early 40s. It was a family-friendly event, so people brought their kids. They were playing in the yard while most of the adults hung out on the backyard deck. And like always, the parents saw other adults in the area and decided to just walk away and go inside. I don't know why this is a thing a lot of parents tend to do. Parents, why do you just walk away at outings and expect other people to watch your kids? I don't get it. I could see if it is your immediate family, but even then, I would warn someone that I was not going to be watching for the safety of my kids. It was near the end of the night, so some people were gone. It was also getting dark and colder, so people were inside. The kids were still running around playing outside. I decided to go home. I went inside and said goodbye to the host. Then I got in my car out front and was on my phone for a minute, and someone angrily walked up and asked me why I left the backyard. They said I was back there and they were counting on me to watch the kids. Note that this was never said to me. They just went inside and said nothing. I was on the deck and at no point in the night was I ever paying attention to the kids. Nothing dangerous happened to the kids. The parents just saw me walking to my car and freaked out. I told her it's not my job to watch your kids, but I probably would have stuck around if I was asked. I was just sitting on the deck drinking beer and minding my own business. I had already been going back and forth from outside to socialize the whole night like everyone else. Not sure why I was the one singled out. There were times when other person happened to be outside and I was inside. Did they assume we were taking shifts? I don't get the mentality of parents, but maybe I'm the a-hole here. Also want to note that the backyard is not fenced off. She brought that up a lot, and I just retorted with, even more reason to stay with your kids. The backyard was one of those open ones that opens into the forest. Before this gets out of hand, I did not drive drunk. I had a single drink and was not drunk or even somewhat tipsy. Edit. I don't think it's clear, so I will clarify. I had no knowledge of being on kid duty. The backyard is large and open and lead into the forest. I was on the small deck by the house. At no point in the night was I watching or listening to kids. The whole night I was periodically going inside and outside freely. Never considered kids because I assumed the responsible parents were keeping an eye out. You're not the a-hole, OP. The parents are a-holes for not asking you if you could watch their kids and just assuming you were watching the kids because you were outside while they were in. There was no reason for them to paint you as a jerk here. After you decided to leave. Why wouldn't you leave? You had said goodbye to the host and called it a night. It's irresponsible of the parents to leave their kids out there for that long without actually asking you if you were okay with watching them. Not the a-hole, OP. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. As a parent, I never assume anyone is watching my child unless I specifically ask them. Also, it's not fair to dump your kid on someone without at least checking in. Even with parents' friends, but especially with my single or childless friends. It's not their job unless they want to do it. Then I'm all too happy to get a little downtime. Finally, the parent had time to walk out and yell at you for their failure as a parent. Then obviously their kid was fine, so they're the jerk here, not you. Not the a-hole. So many accidents happen in these events because every adult will assume someone is watching. I have a child of my own, and when in public, his dad and I frequently communicate about who is watching him. Even when grocery shopping, I'm running to the deli, so I'm not gonna be watching the little guy. As a parent, you can never just assume someone else is watching the kids, especially a person with no particular ties to your child. Not the a-hole. I was going to say it would have been considerate to mention to the host while saying goodbye that other people's kids were in the backyard with no parents in sight, now unattended as you're leaving. A subtle dig and at the same time heads up. But the atmosphere of the whole story after reading to the end changed my mind. They blatantly used you as a babysitter without asking you, a stranger, and then chased you to your car and you had no kids at the party. I've been in your shoes as the one adult left, but they always had the courtesy to say, "Hey, are you fine to do this favor?" and then check back every 10 minutes or so. These people lacked manners and basic parenting responsibilities. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for causing a mass exodus from my uncle's barbecue? My female 32's uncle, male 71, and his wife, female 69, recently hosted a family barbecue at their home. This is normally a rotating thing, so everyone in the family takes turns hosting. My uncle is a very difficult man to get along with, and I mostly went because it is important to my mom, female 66. He is very rigid in his beliefs and will make it very clear to you if you have done something to offend him. Once that has happened, there is no chance for redemption regardless of whether you are family, friends, or a stranger. While at the barbecue, everyone was standing around and my daughter, female 6, helped herself to a banana from the fruit bowl. Now, obviously, you shouldn't take anything that doesn't belong to you without asking, but she is 6, and manners are still being learned. Not saying she was right in this. That being said, my uncle lost his mind. He called her a thieving brat and started threatening to call the cops. I stepped in and he told me to pack up my stuff and go because he didn't want thieves in his home. He told me that neither myself, my daughter, or my husband, male 33, would ever be welcome again because clearly this was a taught behavior. I was furious. I told my uncle that this intolerance was why he has no friends and why we only visit his home out of obligation. I told him that without my mom's family values, there wouldn't be anyone at the barbecue. In the middle of this, he pulled out his phone to call Mr. Police and ask how a little girl would survive in prison. My daughter was beside herself, so I gathered her and my husband and we left. Apparently, after we left, my uncle was ranting and raving, and eventually my cousin 24 female, not his child, told my uncle that he was lucky he didn't try with someone else in the family because I was still polite in what I said. She told him that she refused to eat at the home of someone who thought it is okay to bully a child. As my cousin left, apparently quite a few people followed, and suddenly it was just my uncle and his wife left. His wife has been calling me, telling me that I humiliated him in his own home, and I can't expect his generation to be PC. She has also told me that he has been moping ever since because he feels like an outcast in the family, and that I shouldn't have been so harsh. I am glad I stood up for my daughter, but I never intended for everyone to leave as a result of the banana. Now I wonder if I was too much. Was I the a-hole? You weren't too much, OP, and you're not the a-hole here. Your uncle sucks, and your family needs to stop enabling his bad behavior. Enabling him so far obviously only made him worse. So worse that he thought it was okay to bully a 6-year-old child. I understand if you wanted to discipline her for taking the banana without permission, but calling her a thief and threatening to call the police was just wrong. I'm glad you stood up to him and left with your kid. If everyone left after you did, it's because he was an a-hole and they were done tolerating him. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. His behavior is beyond absurd. Obviously, bullying and threatening a child is awful, and you were right not to tolerate it. Your kid did nothing wrong, anyone would assume that food set out at a family barbecue is there for guests to eat. I would never expect anyone to ask me for food I'd put out. Your uncle is obviously pissed that you called out his shitty behavior and everyone agrees with you. He's likely unaware that he's actually sad because men of older generations were taught only to express anger. Not the a-hole. He's expecting a child to have manners he can't summon a modicum of. If he's old enough to understand right and wrong, he's old enough to understand he's being an a-hole. Tell your aunt this isn't about being PC. It's about being a decent human being. You left. You didn't invite anyone along for the ride. They chose to leave after. If he feels embarrassed in his own home, he can take comfort in the fact that there won't be any guests over in the future for a repeat situation. Good for you for having a backbone. Old folks don't get a pass to be mean 'cause they're old. He's moping around because he knows that he is at fault for how he spoke to and treated a 6-year-old for taking a banana from a fruit bowl. All of you were at his place for a barbecue. Food was the main reason for the gathering. This man has a definite screw loose. He is so over the top reacted to a girl eating a banana. I would never go near him if it were me. Your interaction with his craziness did not ruin the party. You were the catalyst that everyone else was waiting for to leave his home. You're not the a-hole, and if it were me, I would call Uncle's wife and tell her she needs to get him some psychiatric help or they will never see you again. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for refusing to go back to my originally assigned seat on the plane? Throw away. English is not my main language. Apologies for the mistakes. I, 31 female, was traveling today with my 19-month-old son on a plane on a 3-hour flight. My son, being under 2, has to sit on my lap. I also had a big backpack with all the necessities that I keep on the floor and easily accessible. It can get crowded fast, but it's just how it is when you travel alone with a young child. I got assigned a random seat, 12C, at check-in and ended up being in a row with no other empty seat. Although I appreciate it when there is an empty seat next to me as it generally improves our flight experience. It's not an expectation I have and I never ask for it at checkup. Once the boarding was complete, but before takeoff, a flight attendant came to me and offered to move us 3 rows up, 9C. Because there were 2 seats available and that they usually try to accommodate people with young infants. I was delighted and accepted right away. The flight attendant helped me move my things and explained the situation to the other passengers on row 9. The passenger did not appreciate it at all. She started complaining to the flight attendant that she was planning to sleep on the flight and that it would be impossible now. That she specifically chose this seat while checking online because the row was empty and it's gonna be a nightmare now. The flight attendant simply explained that both my seats, old and new, are standard, that the woman only paid for her own seat and that their policy is trying to accommodate young parents if possible. The woman then told them that I should be ashamed to impose all this noise on people that are just trying to enjoy their flight. Especially since it wasn't even my seat and I didn't even pay for it. Honestly, I'm really not good with confrontation. I usually end up either crying or apologizing, so I just ignored her all the way, as if she didn't speak at all. That got her even more angry, but she finally stopped complaining after a while. My son ended up crying only once. I got some stinky eye and some other rude comments. But all in all, the flight was way more comfortable for us this way, so I don't really regret switching seats. But I do wonder if I'm the a-hole. It's true that I didn't pay for that seat, and that it wasn't originally my assigned seat. Am I the a-hole here? Edit, to address some recurring themes. The bag can fit under the seat. It was there during takeoff and landing. It was on the floor the rest of the time for easy access. I was allowed to do that the same way other passengers are allowed to put their laptops. My son was on my lap the whole flight. as per the flight attendant demand. The extra seat was just extra space to feel less crowded and not bump elbows. I'm overweight, yes, but not extremely so. I'm from Europe, my son has to be in my lap. The flight attendant insisted on it when she offered me to switch seats. We aren't allowed to bring car seats with us, they go with luggage. I can't afford to buy an extra seat just to have more space, as my son isn't allowed to sit there yet. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. You paid for a seat. The airline accommodated you and explained to the other passenger. The other passenger paid for her seat only, not the entire row. Sounds like other passenger was an unpleasant person, which isn't your fault. If another mother with a young child did pay for that seat near her, I would almost guarantee she would have complained still. Everyone sucks here. Sleeping comfortably on a 3-hour flight is not something she's entitled to, and she should have shut the F up after the flight attendant responded to her, and not turn to you to try to harass you into moving. But you don't need your whole house on a 3-hour flight. If it doesn't fit in the overhead compartments and below the seats, it shouldn't be a carry-on. Come on, you can pack 3 diapers, not bring the whole changing table, or maybe even split into smaller bags. Not the a-hole. I travel a lot for work, and the lady was wrong, not you. Just because you didn't pay for the upgraded seat doesn't mean she can be a bitch to you. The airplane seat game is a lottery when you don't pay to upgrade. Sometimes you get lucky, and what a treat that is when it happens. Sitting next to a baby, small child can be rough, but traveling with one alone is harder. Forget the lady with the bad attitude. Her life must be hard bitching about babies and sleep.